Hi, welcome to You, Me and Mediumship. Just a few little questions to answer really from some viewers and that have been commenting on the videos. So I thought I'd do a quick video tonight just to cover some of those. One of the questions was based on self, and some people do find that quite hard to get a grasp of, because obviously they say, well, I know who I am, here I am, this is me. So we're not really talking about that self that gets up in the morning, goes to work and earns a crust or two, comes home, has dinner and goes to bed. We're not talking about that person. That is not who you are. And it's the same if you were something like a fireman, a policeman, nurse, or you work behind a till somewhere. That isn't who you are either. That's what you do. It's not who you are. It's what you do for a living. So an artist, for argument's sake, is not who a person is. It's what they do. And it's the same for a psychic, the same for a medium. So if I say I'm a medium, for argument's sake, there's something that I do. Okay, it's not who I am. And obviously sometimes it feels like in some jobs that we do, especially stressful jobs, when we're in like management and we're quite high up, the job tends to become who you are. So obviously that's not a good place to be. So when someone asks about self, who is self? A good way of describing it is if you stand in front of a mirror, for argument's sake, and say your name is Sam, and say, well, I can see Sam in the mirror. There's Sam's arms, Sam's legs, Sam's head, Sam's ears. Yeah, that's great, that's fine. But who's Sam? Those items that you've just mentioned, those limbs, if you like, or parts of the body that you've just mentioned, belong to Sam. So they are not Sam, they belong to him. So who is he? It's the same as when we talk to each other. Obviously, we are not talking necessarily to a few limbs glued together onto a body type of thing. We are talking to the soul of a person. And it's important that we try and remember that we are talking to a soul of a person. We are not talking to anything physical. And obviously, when we see things that way, then I think we would talk probably more nicely to people when we understand that we are communicating with soul and not a person, not a physical being. We are communicating with the soul. Now, that soul can be either very emotional, very cold, very warm, but that's how we describe it. But the truth of the matter is that soul is naturally loving. That soul is naturally warm. Now, what is portrayed on the outside of that, and what that soul wants you to see, or that person rather wants you to see of them, can be sometimes it's disguised. So if you've got a boss, a manager, can be very tough, very strong. Sometimes they can be very rude to some of their employees. But that isn't the soul talking. That's the act of the material mind in a way, because it needs to fulfill its role in what it's doing. That is not the person. Sometimes it's easy to judge people from the way they act, but that act that they put on is not necessarily who they are. And that's easy to say, I guess, because obviously we do meet some awful people sometimes. I say awful, but some people that we just don't understand why they act the way they act. We can't get our minds around people that do horrendous things. We just don't understand why they do it. And the thing is, you can spend a lifetime trying to work out why somebody does something horrendous. And the truth of the matter is, you probably will never know. It's easy sometimes for a person to hide that truth of what's going on inside of them. Obviously, we have trained people, we have psychologists, people like that, who will work away with them and try and get that reason out of them as to why they act in a certain way, or they do certain crimes, or they commit certain crimes. So it's wrong in a way, I guess. Well, we need to get certain people out of society. If they're a danger to society, then we lock them away. But I think what's more important than just locking them away is to try and understand why they did that in the first place. Because at the end of the day, as soon as that person is out of prison, there'll be another one to replace them. So it's a continual cycle of criminals in and out of prison, where really we need to be looking at the reason behind that, why they do what they do. We've got more chance of stopping things happening if we understand the reason why they do what they do, rather than just smacking wrists and locking them away. And like I said, obviously, the way things are, we need to put people behind bars, obviously, to keep society safe. But I think we need to do a lot more research into why people act the way they do sometimes. So the true self that you're looking for in you is, as I've said before, is you need to contact that soul, that light that shines in every living thing there is. That conscious energy within everything that is there. And people will question, well, you say conscious, but surely is a flower conscious, is a tree conscious? And as I've mentioned before, as human beings, we tend to just think us and the animals around us are the only real conscious thing there is. But anything that has that energy flowing through it has an element of consciousness within it. So maybe not a heightened consciousness like ourselves, but there is an element there of consciousness. It has to be there because it is part of the source. It is part of life's energy. So that consciousness has to exist. So if you struggle a little bit about self, the best thing to do, one of the first things, is to be totally honest. And you'll find that when you start to do that, if you are totally honest with yourself, you will then start to be totally honest with those around you, because you will be comfortable with being that way. And if there are certain circumstances that you don't like, things you don't like to do, you'll feel more confident in saying, I'm sorry, I don't want to do that. I just don't feel comfortable doing it. And every human being has the right to do that. We don't need to understand why somebody doesn't want to do something. We do not need to question that. But what we do need to do is be sympathetic and realise that that person is being honest and that's how they feel. So we need to be more supportive to somebody who is uncomfortable in certain situations. We don't need to question it. We don't need to know why they're uncomfortable. We just need to respect that. So within yourself, you need also to respect the fact that there are certain things you don't like. There are certain things you don't like to do. There are certain things you love to do. So you need to be aware that there's nothing wrong with any of that. So you need to be honest with yourself. Now, by doing this, you will start to drill down into the soul, if you like, and find out who you really are. The biggest mistake we make is we try to be who everybody else wants us to be. And it's the same with things like fashion. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but do we really need to be so brainwashed that we all need to wear the latest trends. The reason we do that is simple, because we want to fit in. We need to be part of that pack. We don't want to be isolated. So we will go out and spend a fortune on a pair of trainers so we look good, so we fit in, because all our friends have got them. And it's the same with our accommodation, with our houses. Something that I totally understand people enjoy doing, but it's like when grey is in, everybody goes and paints the walls grey. The thing is, logically, we know that within a couple of years, that's going to be out of fashion, and we're going to be painting another colour. Where's your individuality? Where is something that you really, really like? For argument's sake, like a colour. There may be a colour that you simply adore, but you won't paint your walls in that colour because it's not the in colour. Now that, for me, is something that's very sad. And it's the same with fashion. You may well enjoy wearing certain types of clothes, but you wouldn't go out in the street with those clothes on because it's not the fashion. You won't fit in. Life isn't about fitting in. Life is about being individual and respecting each other's individuality. And I'm a great believer in the fact that if something doesn't harm anyone, then there's nothing wrong in doing it. So as long as you're not harming anyone in doing what you're doing, then there is no harm in doing it. So this is what I mean about self. So we need to shed the fitting in with the rest of the pack. You need to know who you really are, and you need to live that life. So you will start to learn about self. Some people have the strength to be able to live that life, and naturally will be themselves, and they don't care what the latest colour is on the walls. They don't care what the latest fashion is, and they're quite happy to wear what they feel comfortable in and what they like. There are people like that, but the vast majority, and we see it more so now in younger generations, is we must have what everyone else has. And that is a sad way of living, because you then start to lose yourself and your individuality, because all you're doing is fitting in with the crowd. Something to chew over in your own mind. Are you living your life how you want to live it, or are you living it for someone else or for society? Or are you living your life for society? Are you truly being who you are? So you need, when I talk about self, is learn about who you really are. Not that person out there who dresses in the latest fashion and has their walls painted in the latest colours that everyone else has and follows every trend going. I am convinced, obviously you can comment on this, but I'm convinced many people do many things that they do not enjoy. They just do it because everyone else does it. And that is, for me, is a very dangerous state of mind for a human being to be in. But back to our mediumship. So that self is what you're looking for, not the self out there, the self within. What really matters to you. Grasp that first before you start doing any sitting or anything like that with your mediumship, any development classes, whatever it is you do, sitting in a circle. It's important that you are comfortable, that you are living your life how you want to live it first. Because what you will find is as you develop and as you as you start to grasp that self and get to know that self, you will then find that life sometimes can be quite difficult because you are changing. You're understanding things in a different way. Things you believed 10 years ago, you will no longer believe. You will question. And the more you develop and the better the understanding you get about life itself, its purpose, you will change as a person, because you will realize that all the things that you thought made you happy no longer do, because you are not truly living your life as who you really are. So it's important you get that bit right first, live your life for who you really are, then start with the mediumship side and the development side of things, because you will then have that grasp of energy of self. And that is, as I've said a million times before, and you're probably getting very bored of it now, but as I've said before, that energy of self is what you will be pushing out there and expanding. That soul, that light from within you is what you're putting out there to merge with spirit. And as I've described it before, a glass of water, and we just drop a small amount of ink into it and we watch it merge with the water. So the water is your energy, your beauty, your soul. The ink is that of spirit. And you just watch the two merge, those two energies merge together. And that is the practice of mediumship. That is how it works. The merging of those two energies. So find source within yourself, and you'll have no problem whatsoever finding that source out there in spirit. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We basically only talked about one subject, and that was self. I wanted to cover a couple more, but I think I will end it there for you. Just have a think about that. Please like, subscribe and share, just to keep me going really on doing more and more videos. I've done a few this week. Next week there may not be quite so many, maybe the odd one. I've said it before, but I really must keep doing Patreon. A lot of interest on there, and especially on the development side of things for up and coming mediums. Me and Mediumship on Patreon, so take a look. I'll put a link in the description. So I hope the video helps you in some small way with your journey. So take care, have a lovely evening, and I'll speak again soon. Bye for now.